Hello, everybody. Very important lesson today. It's kind of the intro, but it's really a big chunk of this unit. I can calculate volume using their formulas. So, you need to know the formulas. That's the problem. They're not really given to you like they were in the past. I have a way to help you. Basically, they're going to either be length times width times height or pi r squared height, depending if the base is a rectangle or square or a circle. Triangular prism is 1/2 in front. Pyramid and cone is 1/3 in front. And sphere is kind of separate. Sphere is given to you, so you don't have to worry about memorizing that one. So here's how we do it. There's 3 length times width times heights. There's 2 pi r squares heights. Volume equals length times width times height in pi r squared height. 3 length times width times heights. 2 pi r squared heights. This is your rectangular prism, triangular prism, pyramid. This is your cylinder. This is your cone. 1/2 is for triangle, 1/3 pyramid and cone. That's it. All right, if you can do that, you have your formulas. They're either length times width times height or pi r squared height. If it's a rectangular base, rectangular prism, triangular prism, or a pyramid. Well, I guess a pyramid is a triangular prism, not a rectangular base, but it's definitely not a circular base. It's length times width times height. And then again, for your circular bases, cylinder and cone, pi r squared height, 1/3 pi r squared height. And then again, sphere is given to you, so you don't have to memorize that. That's 4/3 pi r cubed. So let's go. Let's get into all the different shapes. Let's actually start with number 3 here. A cube. A cube is a special type of rectangular prism. So it's length times width times height, where the length, the width, and the height are all the same. So V equals 8.5, 8.5, 8.5. We type that into the calculator. This calculator is going to take a moment to load. I'll put it into my own calculator. And yes, in case you're wondering, you can type in 8.5 cubed. It's 614.125 cubic inches. So there's really not much to talk about with the rectangular prism. There's really no twists. The only twist is that a cube is a rectangular prism where the length, the width, and the height are all the same. Next, we come into a cylinder. Cylinder is pi r squared height. And again, once we have our formulas written out, just refer to this list. Once you have them written, just refer to it, and you have them from there. I don't need to pull them from your head every time. You need to understand the relationship between a diameter and a radius. A radius is from center to a point on the circle. Radius is half the diameter. You're going to see this in almost every problem. So if the diameter is 12, the radius is 6. So V equals pi 6 squared, 27. Now, this is very important. With pi's, sometimes you type pi in, sometimes you don't. If it says rounded to whatever, type pi in. If it says in terms of pi, or there's pi's in the answers like this one, don't type pi in. So we're still going to write it, but on paper, we're still going to write it into the formula. But when I go to my calculator, I'm not going to write pi times 6 squared times 27. I'm just going to go 6 squared times 27. 972. So V equals 972, and then pi. If we're doing it in terms of pi, don't type pi into the calculator, but there will be a pi in the answer. We'll come back to the rounded later on when we get to the cone. Pyramid is length times width times height, 1/3. V equals 1/3. The length is 25. The width is 17. The height is 12. Make sure the height is straight up and down. If it's not, if it's the slant height, we'll talk about that later on. Pop it into the calculator. Alpha x, 1/3, 25, 17, 12. This whole lesson, at least so far, it's really just substituting into formulas. 1,700 cubic centimeters. So we're going to progress towards some twists. Let's do the cone now. So circular base, pi r squared height. But again, we're just referring to this list that we already wrote out. Once you have the list, just look at the list. You see cone, you write down the cone formula. And as time passes, these might stick into your brain. If they do, great. If not, build it and then use it. The radius is half of the diameter, so the radius is 4. 1/3 pi 4 squared 12. Now this one says to the nearest cubic inch. It doesn't say rounded. It doesn't say in terms of pi. It wants it rounded, in which case we do type pi in. So I have 1/3 pi, because it doesn't say in terms of pi. And most of the time, you're going to type pi in. 4 squared times 12. And to the nearest inch, that's 201. So if it says in terms of pi, don't type pi in. If it says rounded to whatever, do type pi in. Okay, sphere. We're just going to hold off on sphere for now. We don't need to go over every single thing. You just sub into the formula. Let's take a look at number 17. We have a triangular prism. Triangular prism is 1/2 length times width times height. So the only little twist here, there's 4 numbers. The length and width, think of it as the length and width of the rectangle. And the height is what's going straight up from the rectangle, which would be that. So my length and width are 3 and 8. My height is 4. That 5 is the slant height. That's not the length or width or height of the prism. And now that I have that, I put it into my calculator. 1/2, 384, 1/2, 384 is 48 cubic centimeters. So for a triangular prism, the length and the width, I would think of the length and the width as the length and width of the rectangle, and the height is going straight up from the rectangle. The slant height is not involved in the volume formula. If you have half of a shape, put a half in front. I have a half of a sphere here that's called a hemisphere, by the way. You hear that in social studies as well. So sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. I'm just going to put a half in front of it. I'm going to do half 4/3 pi r cubed. If you're doing half of a shape, just put half in front. V equals half 4/3 pi r cubed. You can see half of a sphere. You can see half of a cylinder. You're not going to really see half of a rectangular prism because it's still a rectangular prism. I don't recall ever seeing half of a cone. I guess it could be half of a cone, but I don't recall ever seeing that. Now again, be careful when to cut in half and when not to. The radius is from the center of the circle to a point on the circle, basically half of the circle. This is the radius. So I'm not cutting anything in half here. It would be 15 cubed. Because it says in terms of pi, don't type pi into the calculator. So I have 1/2 4/3. Don't type pi in. 15 cubed. 2250. So V equals 2250 pi. If it said rounded to whatever, then I would have typed the pi. So if it's half of a shape, just throw half in front, whether it's a hemisphere or here it's a cylinder. So I'm not going to do this, but since cylinder is pi r squared h, I would just do half pi r squared h. All right, some more twists. This isn't a big twist, but it is a twist that catches students a lot of the time. Pyramid, we know, is 1/3 length times width times height. It says that it has a square base with an edge length of 14, so that's 14. Altitude is height, so if it ever says altitude, altitude is height of 24. And where students get messed up, they're like, well, I got the length, but I don't have the width. Since it's a square base, all sides of a square are the same. If it's a square base, which it almost always will be, the length is equal to the width. It's the same thing. So it becomes 1/3, 14, 14, 24. One third, 14, 14, 24, 1568. Most of the time with a pyramid, it does have a square base. So if it's a square base, the length and the width are the same because a square has all sides the same. So that is a twist that will definitely come up in this whole set of problems. This one's a little bit more to it. It incorporates something we did earlier this year. Technically in Math 8 you did it. This just seems a little bit big. Let me make it a little bit smaller. I got a volume of a cone, so I go V equals 1/3 pi r squared height. My radius is half of 10, which is 5. The problem is it gave me the slant height. It didn't give me the height, it gave me the slant height. I need the height. If they give me the slant height, to find the height, I use Pythagorean theorem. Because I have a right triangle, I have two sides, I want to find the third. If given the slant height, you're going to have to use Pythagorean theorem to find the height. This comes up a lot. So, A and B are the legs. So 5, and we'll call this B, what we're trying to find. C is the hypotenuse, the long slanted side, 13. 25, I do my Pythagorean theorem at this point. B squared equals 144, square root, use a calculator if you need to, 12. Now that I have that, I substitute in, R is 5, H is 12. It says in terms of pi, so don't type pi in. 1/3, don't type pi in. 5 squared, 12, 100. So your answer is 100 pi. If this doesn't work out to be a nice number, then don't round until the very end. Just copy and paste that value into there, and you'll let the calculator do the work for you. But you don't want to round to the very end. This one didn't come up, but it will come up in some of the other examples. So this whole set is that. And then I did the same thing with a pyramid. For whatever reason, I don't see it as clearly with the pyramid, but if they give you the slant height, you're going to have to do Pythagorean theorem. So if the slant height is 6, basically this is your right triangle. If this is 6, this is half of 6, which is 3. I'm trying to find the height. So I do a, it's really the same thing. It just, for whatever reason, I don't see it as clearly. It's more inside the shape of the right triangle than the cone. But it's the same thing. 3 squared plus b squared equals 6 squared. The slant height is always the hypotenuse. 9 plus b squared equals 36. Minus 9 minus 9. B squared equals 27. Square root. So this is what I was saying before, where it might not be a nice number. You could leave it as radical 27, or you're probably better off making it into a decimal. Either way is fine. 5.5 dot dot dot. And now that I have that, v equals 1/3 length times width times height. V equals 1/3 length and width of the pyramid are 6 and 6. The height is at 5 dot dot dot. So when I go to my calculator, I've got 1/3, 6, 6, and I'm going to copy and paste that height, and it wants it to the nearest cubic inch, 62. So if they give you the slant height in a pyramid or a cone, you're going to have to do Pythagorean theorem to find the height. You're going to have to cut either the diameter or the edge of the square in half to find one leg. The slant height is going to be the hypotenuse, and the height is going to be the other leg. That's really it. I feel like I did a very thorough job of all the different types of ways you may have to calculate volume. That's it. We're going to build on this, practice it, and again, the most important thing is to be able to build your formulas. Volume equals length times width times height, and pi r squared height. There's 3 length times width, there's 2 pi r squareds. 1/2 is for triangle, 1/3 pyramid and cone. Once you have that, and you're done. That's it. Goodbye. Practice. See ya.